Good morning, Crosswalk family. I am missing you all this weekend while I attend the Evergreen Baptist Association's annual gathering in Olympia, Washington. It has been good to gather with other progressive Jesus people for encouragement, fellowship, prayer, learning, and worship amid the many and varied challenges of this difficult and divisive year. The world might feel like a dumpster fire, but take heart, crosswalkers. We are not alone. There are other churches like ours committed to living the message of God's expansive and inclusive love. Last night, I had the privilege of being the preacher for the closing worship service. I'm so grateful to Pete for his generosity in sharing the Crosswalk platform today with me, as well as fairly regularly throughout the year, and to all of you for your ongoing encouragement. Truth be told, Evergreen would not even know me as a preacher teacher without all of you. The theme for this year's Evergreen Gathering was Strangers No More, based on the biblical text of Leviticus 19:34. Believe it or not, I did not have study Leviticus or preach from Leviticus on my 2025 bingo card. But as I've spent time in study, prayer, and listening to the Spirit, I've gained a deep appreciation for this book, and it's proven meaningful for me personally. I hope it will also be meaningful for you. Before we get into the text, I'd like to tell you a story. I once knew a little girl who was shy and quiet. When the girl was young, her family relocated every 1 to 2 years, which meant she had to change schools, churches, and neighborhoods, 4 different communities in elementary school alone. Always the new kid, ever the stranger. 4th grade was particularly difficult for the girl. She was 9 years old, and her family lived in that town for only 11 months. At the end of the school year, she had to say goodbye and leave behind her only friend, a girl named Janie. In that long ago world where long distance phone calls cost money and there was no internet to stay connected, she and Janie lost touch. This happened to the girl repeatedly. Just about the time she was beginning to form friendships, off her family would go. Now, eventually, the moving stopped and the family stayed put. But the ripple effect of those early life experiences formed and forged a core identity. By all appearances, she belonged, but the feeling of being a stranger, an outsider, remained. She took that identity through her adolescence and into her adulthood. Don't forget our girl. We will return to her a little bit later. The biblical text for today is Leviticus 19:34, and I will read from the New American Standard Bible. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love them as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So let's talk Leviticus for a bit. If you're like me, maybe you've never spent a considerable time in this book. Leviticus is not a book you read over the lunch hour, take to the beach, or peruse on an airplane. The holiness codes can be embarrassing to read silently, never mind to speak them aloud, and even more baffling to understand. We will not get bogged down in those particulars today because there's something larger at work. But suffice it to say that all cultures, yes, even our own, have such codes. Acceptable worship, food, dress, and sexual behavior to this very day are all highly contextual matters all over the world. And so it is with Leviticus. For this morning, I want to invite us to reflect together on the idea of holding the center. According to the Interpretation Commentary series, Leviticus' primary objective is to emphasize the importance of the priestly congregational partnership that keeps the community of faith and the world it serves in the center of God's will. With repetitive refrains, I am the Lord your God, and be holy as I am holy, the people of God are reminded who God is and what life belonging to God looks like. In case you never noticed, never gave it any thought, or never took Carol Tolan's Old Testament class on Thursday nights, Leviticus is the center of the Torah, the central scriptures and teachings of Judaism. Say it with me, will you? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Right on. We are focusing on chapter 19, which interestingly is sandwiched between related chapters, and it holds them together at the center. Now, when a biblical text centers something, I try to pay attention. So, chapters 18 and 19 outline codes of conduct to separate and distinguish Israel from other peoples. But chapter 19, in between, paints a picture of a life centered in God and belonging to God. It has been called the apex of the Old Testament's ethical teachings. Chapter 19 shows us what God's will looks like. Of course, here at Crosswalk, we call that shalom. Deep peace, well-being, and wholeness for humanity and all of creation. This is what God's will is, always. A people centered in God's will, actively pursuing shalom, lives in right relationship with God, with human beings, and with nature. Such a people worships only the living God, not false gods. Such a people deals honestly, justly, and mercifully with each other and outsiders. Such a people neither exploits humans nor the earth for gain. Such a people maintains healthy boundaries in all kinds of relationships and even with the land. Such a people seeks the welfare of the entire community. The Leviticus text makes it clear that holiness is not just an idea. It's not achieved by withdrawing from the world, but by actively engaging life in the world, by embodying God's holy character in the various spheres of human existence. We do not and cannot become holy on our own. Holiness is neither passive nor reserved for the religious sector. Potential for holy ripples lies at the center of every sphere of the human life. We've spent this entire year doing a deep dive into Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. which could be viewed as Jesus's commentary on the holiness code of Leviticus, revealing the deeper spiritual and ethical meaning behind the literal commandments. The central similarity between Leviticus 19 and the Sermon on the Mount is this theme of holiness, particularly its relational, ethical expression. As we might expect, the Sermon on the Mount does not abolish the law, but reinterprets and fulfills them. While Leviticus repeatedly states, "Be holy as I am holy," Jesus implores in Matthew 5:48, "Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." Both texts include commands to love the neighbor, and Jesus extends that even to include enemies. Both passages contain instructions for caring for the vulnerable and ensuring justice. Jesus reinterprets the external righteousness commanded in Leviticus by emphasizing not only actions, but intentions, prohibiting not only murder, but also hatred, calling out not only adultery, but lust as well. There are deep connections between the ancient Hebraic laws and Jesus's life and ministry, and that is especially evident in the Sermon on the Mount. For this Evergreen Gathering weekend, our Association of Churches assembled to consider the specific call to be holy by welcoming strangers. We wondered together how to embody welcome while ICE rounds up and disappears the migrants and immigrants in our communities. While LGBTQ folk are denied rights and gender-affirming healthcare. While our history books are redacted and rewritten. While women and girls are yet to be believed or to have autonomy over their bodies. While children continue to be unsafe in their schools. And while the message of God's inclusive, expansive, welcoming love is perverted for power and propaganda. We acknowledged that these matters are numerous and large, encircling us and clamoring for our attention. Trying to be missional Jesus people this year has felt a lot like playing whack-a-mole, the arcade game. Just when we think we've made an impact over here, another matter pops up over there, and so on and so on. How do we live into our holy potential and make holy ripples in a chaotic world? The truth is, we cannot be everything, everywhere, all at once. So we've got to make the most of the only space, place, and time that we truly ever have, the here and now. With that in mind, I invite you to center yourself as a community with me right here, right now, so that we might dream together about healing this beautiful world of ours from the inside out. Recall that the strangers referenced in the text are people who reside with us. Now, it might be easier to call to mind groups of stereotypical stranger categories. I don't want us to forget the atypical strangers among us who often go unnoticed. I am referring to the countless humans who appear to belong, yet feel like outsiders, even in their own lives and communities, where belonging is simply assumed. In our families, workplaces, schools, churches, and neighborhoods, are strangers who reside with us, people who exist within our own spheres of influence, yet remain unknown and unseen. In fact, social connection is such a concern in our country that the US Surgeon General published a report calling it an epidemic and a health crisis in 2023. According to that report, only 39% of adults in the US said they felt very connected to others. And approximately half of US adults report experiencing loneliness, with some of the highest rates among young adults. Just 3 weeks ago, I read an article in Good Faith Media about mental health ministry, which highlighted loneliness and isolation, among other things, that are now part of our congregational reality in the United States. Some of the strangers in our midst are not out there. If we trust the statistics, nearly half of us in this very room experience loneliness, which seems to me to be the opposite of welcomed and accepted. Remember the girl's story that I shared earlier? That girl's nomadic childhood made her a resilient adult in many ways. It empowered her to go whenever new opportunities called or when life happened to her unexpectedly. She knew how to pack a house and family with precision and just as quickly set up and organize a new place. She learned not to be too attached to homes or towns or churches or people. After all, those things come and go. Over time, though, she tired of being a stranger in her own life. She wanted to belong, to put down roots, to be attached to people and to place. But for that, she would first need to befriend the parts of herself that were unseen, even by her. She would need to welcome those parts of her that still identified as stranger, an outsider. She would need to be vulnerable enough to seek out people who were safe, people whose lives were centered in God, pursuing shalom. Eventually, she found her people and learned to connect. It made such a difference in her life that a longtime friend said to her, "You are more confident and have more friends than I have ever seen you have before." Crosswalk family, she is me. And you have been part of my own journey from stranger to beloved member of the community. I share my own story with you this morning because I see our stories centered in the text. You shall love them as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. There it is, a call to remember our own experiences. How many of us have forgotten or tried really hard to forget the circumstances or seasons in our own lives when we ourselves have been outsiders? We mustn't forget. Remembering what it's like to be new to the neighborhood, to the workplace, to the church, to the family, to this country gives us a point of commonality through which we can connect and create new centers for relationships built on shared humanity. That is to say, remembering is a throughway for empathy. And no matter what other people might say, it is not a bad thing. Empathy is a superpower. To know and be known is surely risky, but it is the center of being in relationship with God and people. Welcoming the stranger must start here. If we cannot love and welcome all parts of ourselves, we cannot love and welcome those closest to us. And if we cannot love and welcome those closest to us, we cannot love and welcome neighbors. And if we cannot love and welcome neighbors, we probably cannot love and welcome enemies. And if we cannot love and welcome enemies, then surely we cannot love and welcome strangers. Friends, ripples on the surface of a pond do not move from the outside inward, but from the center outward. I see this rippling movement of embodied love in the teachings of Jesus. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. Love God, love yourself, love your neighbor, love your enemy, love the stranger. In her book, See No Stranger, Memoir and Manifesto of Revolutionary Love, Valerie Carr declares revolutionary love as the call of our time, a radical, joyful practice that extends in three directions outward, from ourselves to others and to our opponents. She defines a stranger as a part of me I do not yet know. Did you catch that? A part of me I do not yet know. And she suggests that if we begin from a place of curiosity and wonder, the world will begin to change around us. That this simple practice can transform individuals, relationships, communities, cultures, and even nations. She got me curious. So I'm wondering what might be possible if we looked inward with curiosity and welcomed lovingly and tenderly the parts of ourselves that we cannot yet accept. If we greeted each person in our inner circle as a part of us that we do not yet know. If we widened our circle to include neighborly connections as opportunities to welcome parts of us that we do not yet know. If we expanded that circle further and permitted ourselves to see even our enemies as parts of ourselves that we do not yet know. And if the circle completely blew open, had no bounds, and opened to brand new relationships with strangers on the chance that they too are parts of ourselves that we do not yet know. Carr challenges her readers to choose to be curious about the people who move through our lives, to risk and lean in closer, to set aside preconceived notions, to practice deep listening, to cultivate empathy. All the while regularly returning to the center to ask God, what is now required of me? And to ask ourselves, how will I live differently? Just imagine the ever expanding ripples of holy embodied love, circles of shalom that a community like ours might create if we each chose daily to move in and through our spheres of connection with wonder and curiosity. My friends, Leviticus 19 and the teachings of Jesus call us to this revolutionary love. We are invited to embody holy love in every sphere of our lives, to remember that we belong to God, to pursue God's shalom. Only then can we truly welcome the stranger and effectively transform ourselves, our relationships, and our communities. Some revolutions do take place in grand public moments, but often they begin in spaces like this room, where gathered people like us who hear the Spirit's invitation and envision a better world. In his powerful and unsettling poem called The Second Coming, William Butler Yeats writes of a world in chaos, not unlike ours, saying, "Things fall apart. The center cannot hold." While there is no denying that the present days feel chaotic, some days like our world is coming apart, we must not despair. Instead, let us heed God's call to the center, and let us hold the center together. May it be so. Amen.